And now Reggie and Liz will share with us the new Beatitudes for a Just World, written by one of my favorite ministers, Reverend Mark Sandlin.
Blessed are those who fight for equality, for they will dismantle systems of oppression and create a world where all are valued.
Blessed are the marginalized, for their voices will be heard, and they will shape the future.
Blessed are the climate activists, for they will inherit a planet where justice for the earth and future generations reigns.
Blessed are the refugees and displaced people, for they will find sanctuary and solidarity in a world that welcomes them with open arms.
Blessed are those who advocate for workers' rights, for they will ensure fair wages, dignity, and respect for all labor.
Blessed are those who seek racial justice, for they will dismantle racism and build a world where all skin colors are celebrated equally.
Blessed are those who stand up for the oppressed, for they will be a voice for the voiceless and bring about true liberation.
Blessed are the homeless and the hungry, for they will find nourishment, shelter, and hope in a society that finally cares for all.
Blessed are the advocates for mental health, for they will tear down stigmas and build systems of care that nurture all minds, hearts, and souls.
Blessed are the truth tellers, for they will challenge power, expose corruption, and speak for those who cannot.
Blessed are the healers and peace builders, for they will restore communities broken by violence, poverty, and division. Amen.
Thank you. Today, we want to talk about woke Jesus. Last Sunday, we gathered to view a film called God and Country about Christian nationalism. And I feel sure that for all of us who were there, we know that that film showed who Jesus is not. Throughout his life, Jesus always delivered the same message of love and compassion. It never changed. He showed by how he lived his life, a life of love and compassion. From the very beginning, in one of his first sermons, which Tom read this morning, called the Sermon on the Mount or the Beatitudes, to the very end of his life, the message was consistent. We are told that towards the end of his life, he wept over Jerusalem because they had been blind to his message and their hearts were hardened and they did not know the way of peace. When he stood up in the temple in his last days, he spoke the same message. I have been sent to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives, release for the prisoners, comfort for all who mourn. Brings me to the term woke. Often used in Christianity today, it originally meant being aware of the social and racial injustices that are around you, not just individual people, but around the world. Conservative Christians and politically conservative have often used that term negatively, saying that it refers to people who are overly progressive, who are extreme, who have radical views. I don't know when feeding people and giving people health care became a radical view. Some conservative ministers have even decried the Sermon on the Mount that Tom read this morning, saying, oh, it's too woke, it's too radical for Jesus. The word woke has roots in African American history where it meant being aware and attentive to important facts and issues, especially those related to racial and social justice. It gained wider usage in the 2010s with the Black Lives Movement as a way to express injustice and police brutality awareness. To say that someone is awakened in spiritual terms is to say they are aware of the world and the injustices and are ready to go to work to change those injustices. To define a person as woke is a compliment that they are addressing inequities and political injustice. Today, we celebrate Easter. Today, we celebrate Jesus. Jesus certainly preached a woke theology. We're told he wept over Jerusalem. Was it because they weren't awakened? I believe so. His life made it clear that he ministered in a way that showed that being woke meant living, serving, and loving. It wasn't just words, but action. In our extravagant welcome we read this morning, we speak of servant leadership and our striving to be servant leaders. Jesus was a servant leader. He cared for people. He healed the sick. He fed the hungry. He washed the feet of his disciples. He was well aware of injustices. He was a leader who would quietly expose the evils in the human heart and challenge even us today to protest those evils. Jesus was an activist. He protested the racial and ethnic division between Jews and Samaritans. When walking through Samaria, he broke the norms and challenged them when he engaged in a conversation with an excluded woman sitting by the well. He demonstrated there were no divides. In the parable of the Good Samaritan, the Jewish priest, the Levite, the Good Samaritan were all enemies. He used the Samaritan of a true neighbor, defying prejudice to help a neighbor. He associated with those who were considered less than. We all remember the story of Zacchaeus climbing up in the sycamore tree and Jesus going to dine with him that evening. He clearly protested religious elitism. He often criticized the Pharisees and the Sadducees and other religious leaders for their arrogance and hypocrisy and outward displays of piety, while inwardly being full of greed and self-indulgence. His teachings often undermined the interpretation of the law. You weren't supposed to heal on the sick, but he did, touching the lepers. He stood toe to toe with the religious leaders. He turned over the tables in the temple and drove the merchants out. It was a direct challenge to the practice of the elite temple establishment. He didn't do it for attention or just because he was having a bad day. He did it because people were being exploited in the name of religion. He wrecked the religious profit-driven system that was preying on the poor. The act was Jesus's protest against the commercialization and exploitation of religion. And I love the way Reverend Mark Sandlin says it. He says this was Jesus's hell no moment, just hell no. We also see Jesus protest the grip of toxic patriarchy by allowing women both place and privilege with his disciples. This challenged the norms because women were supposed to be excluded from any religious leadership. He made a woman the first to tell his disciples that he had risen and the first to deliver the message to the others. Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Susanna, and others always traveled with Jesus and were always near him, elevating their spiritual significance and challenging their marginalized positions in society. He cared about all human suffering, and by today's definition, he was indeed woke. He was a man of color, living in a world of color. The idea of race and racial identity was not invented for another 2,500 years. And even though he wasn't battling racism, he was committed to opposing nationalism, xenophobia, and any discrimination against any group of people. There is no difference in the Jew and the Greek, he said. We talked a little bit last Sunday about the difference in nationalism and patriotism. Nationalism forces us to place our nation and ourselves above all others. But Jesus said we're all one. You can love your country and work to improve your country, but not love it above all others that causes harm to other nations. So, yes, Jesus was woke. He was woke to the plight of all humanity. He was woke to the social concerns of every single person. Jesus was a compassionate caregiver and a status quo changer. He was a gentle healer and a radical activist. He was a wall destroyer, a barrier breaker. He was a shepherd to the people on the street, but holy terror to the hypocrites in the temple. He poured out his life in acts of service and generosity and empathy and sacrifice. He made selfish, powerful, entitled religious people feel very uncomfortable because he welcomed everyone to the table and declared them equal. With every breath, he preached social justice, and with every act, he shaped it. If we try to have Christianity without social justice, we have taken out the entire message at the heart of Jesus, and we're left with a fake religion we're dragging around. Justice is what Jesus was doing and preaching and demanding of those who would follow him. And that justice is exactly what made the powerful want him dead. To be Jesus woke is to be aware that, like Jesus, we will be both celebrated and ridiculed, both attractive and an outcast, and sometimes loved and sometimes despised. But Jesus tells us we must be present with all humanity, and if we are going to follow the teachings of Jesus, we must have the courage, even in these difficult times today, to be present for those who need us. This is the woke Jesus that we have been called to follow. I am so proud to be part of a woke community like Wedgewood that makes justice their focus. I am so proud to be part of a church that puts out a statement of support for the return of Kilmore Garcia and the other immigrants and people who today are receiving no justice. I am proud we are focusing on the same issues Jesus focused on, the same issues Martin Luther King, Gandhi, John Lewis, and so many other servant leaders focused their lives on. I'm proud that we're a group of people who like to get into good trouble. And may we continue to always have the courage to follow in the footsteps of all of those who made this path before us. May it be so. Amen.
Amen. That was beautiful.
Thank you. And now Ashanti has a closing song for us. Thank you, Ashanti.
Thank you, Ashanti.
Let's have our benediction, and then since some people said they've got to really scoot out by 12 for family gatherings, we'll have our after the amen and can talk and discuss as long as we want to. But let's have our benediction. Let us be uncomfortable with easy answers, dissatisfied with a shallow fake peace, restless until all people are free. Let us be blessed troublemakers, holy agitators, and get into some good trouble. Sacred distributors of the disruptors of the status quo. And when we grow weary, may we be reminded that we are following in the footsteps of a revolutionary Jesus and so many others who were early troublemakers. Help us to always work for a world transformed by love.
We extinguish this flame, but we keep the light in our hearts. Taking outside of these walls into the world in which we live in, until we see each other again. Amen, Ashe, and may it be so. Now go in peace.